Not only is today's guest one of the most recognisable fertility doctors in the world, she has walked the path of struggling to have a family herself. And while there are a lot of wonderful fertility doctors around, hearing from someone who can empathise with what you're going through on a personal level makes such a big difference. Today, Dr. Natalie Crawford is here to chat about what makes the biggest difference when you are struggling with fertility, what she wishes that more women knew, and how you can support yourself best as you're trying to conceive.
Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with me today. To say that I'm excited that Dr. Crawford is here with us is a bit of an understatement. I was so thrilled when she said yes, when I asked her to come on to the podcast today to speak a bit about her work and her upcoming book that she has coming out. And she is just such a breath of fresh air in this space. She has such a positive outlook on what she thinks is possible for women and for couples and for the fertility industry, I think, as a whole. And she's really changing the game in terms of education. I'm sure you have come across Dr. Crawford at some point through her social media channels or her podcast. But in case you don't know too much about her, Dr. Crawford is board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology. She's the co-founder of Fertility, a boutique fertility practice in Austin, Texas. She's also a health educator on social media, YouTube, and hosts a podcast As a Woman, Fertility, Hormones, and Beyond. Her debut book, The Fertility Formula, will be released by Random House in a few months' time. In this episode today, Dr. Crawford shares her own personal journey to building her family, which was far from easy. And we also talk about where to turn when you've already done everything perfectly and things haven't worked out for you. We talk about the advice that she has for couples who are approaching their late 30s or throughout their 40s. And she talks about what she sees are the major lifestyle factors that are consistently making the biggest difference in terms of success outcomes. So I am so honored to have her here with us today. So let's get started. Dr. Natalie, thank you so much for being here and coming onto the podcast today. It's such an honor to meet with you and connect with you. And I just wanted to, before we started, put out how much we appreciate you do for this community and all of the sharing of the knowledge that you bring. There's not a lot of fertility doctors, I think, doing that kind of work. And I'm not exactly sure how you find the time, but it is wonderful to have you. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me and making the time so that we can have this discussion. I'm honored to be here.
Can you start by, just in case there is someone listening to this who hasn't come across you or your work before, can you share a little bit about who you are and what is your mission that you are bringing to the world?
Okay, well, that's like a big, lofty question to start with. I'm a fertility doctor, so I'm an OBGYN and an REI. So I went through, OBGYN training and then reproductive endocrinology fellowship. I've been out in practice for over a decade and I'm in Austin, Texas. And I'm co-founder of a fertility practice here called Fertility. But, I spend a lot of time online talking about fertility and trying to educate women and men and people who want to try to understand their body better, understand their hormones and their fertility. I started on social media a really long time ago, and that has grown to include a YouTube channel and a podcast called As a Woman. And I have a book coming out this spring called The Fertility Formula, because truly I went through infertility myself. And even as a physician, I had so many questions that weren't answered. I realized my own fund of knowledge about some of these basic things and about what I could do and what I could control. I didn't know. And it felt like such an out of control process. And then sitting across from women every day and having them say the same thing over and over of, I can't believe I didn't know this information sooner. Why does nobody talk about this? Why do I have to wait until I'm having a problem to get to this point? And if I was going to answer, what's my big mission? Um, I'd really love to change what we do in fertility. The fertility space exists to solve a problem, and it's a very reactive field, meaning you have to fail first to then even get testing to even find out what's going on. But that really reflects an older time period when infertility was less common. And as we see that rates of infertility are rising, I don't really think that that should be the standard of care anymore. I think we should have a more proactive approach to how we discuss fertility. It's a sign of your hormonal health, your overall health. It's a life goal for so many people, and empowering people to understand their body, to know how the choices they make can impact their hormones and their health, and then also help people be their own advocates. Because unfortunately, in today's medical system, you've got to play a really active role, especially if you do end up having infertility. It's not something you can just be passive about a lot of the time. You've got to really help drive that ship. So, my big lofty goal would be to completely change what the fertility, field is. Instead of being women must fail first before they seek care, I would love to see this be a more proactive field. I feel like that's a more empowering way. It doesn't mean you can prevent all infertility. I think we both know that, but it puts people in a place of power instead of feeling powerless, which is what so many of us, myself included, feel when they're in the midst of infertility.
Mm. It's a really interesting point that you make, that you have to kind of fail before you get taken seriously, or before you really are addressed in this space. And that, I've never really thought of it that way, but you're so right. And I think that then sets you up for every step of the way. It's like, well, my body has done something wrong, or I've done something wrong. And as women, as you well know, we tend to blame ourselves.
Yeah.
And why do we get to this place? Why isn't that information being given to us sooner? It's incredibly frustrating. I would love to hear you speak about how you found the journey of building your own family, and especially when you were the expert by the time you decided to have a family. You'd been practicing medicine already, am I right, for several
Yeah.
years? And you still struggled to navigate it. So I would love to hear your experiences about that.
Well, thanks for asking, Jenna. It was terrible. I mean, right? Like going through infertility is such a, soul changing process. It makes you question who you are, what your life is going to look like, question what's important to you. And it's one of those things that I was so unprepared for, even as somebody who at the time we started trying for a child in my last years of residency. So I was already an OBGYN and going into my reproductive endocrinology fellowship. So I am an expert and still felt unprepared for what happened. I remember having pregnancy loss after pregnancy loss, and at the beginning being very casual. This happens, it's okay. And, reciting medical statistics. And then really feeling so alone, feeling like my body was failing me, feeling like I didn't know who to go to for help. And of course, there's things along the way that you learn. This is a long time ago, I'm old, but during the time, we didn't share openly about trying to get pregnant. We didn't share about infertility. Certainly, none of my colleagues knew. I mean, none of my friends even knew what we were going through. And that worsened as more time went on, right? For pregnancy loss number 3, I was like, how do I call my best friend and say, hey, I'm struggling? I just had my 3rd miscarriage, when I didn't tell her about the other 2. So I almost felt like I dug myself into this hole. And even though I love every person who shares their fertility journey in real time on the internet. It's such an important, powerful, vulnerable move to make. It helps so many people. It's so awe-provoking to me because I didn't even share it in my personal life, but it is something that I wish I had done different when I look back, is that I had told the people who were close to me what was going on, because I didn't even give them the opportunity to show up. And that mental aspect of feeling like I'm the problem, my body's failing me, will this ever happen? And then what should I do? Yet getting dismissed by my doctors at the same time. I bring up a concern. It says, oh, you're young. Oh, it's okay. Oh, just keep trying. Oh, you're just stressed because of residency. And these casual dismissal that I'm sure as a physician I've done in a variety of circumstances without even realizing it, because you're always triaging problems or what is life threatening and like thinking through things in your brain. But to be on the receiving end of it for something that felt so shattering to me and then felt so dismissive when it happened, it means changed how I practice medicine every day since then. And of course, how I look at fertility and my strong belief that nobody should have to go through this to kind of get answers. Nobody should have to work this hard or advocate this hard to just get testing done. Why, if you want to know this information, do you have to lose pregnancies first, or do you have to struggle to conceive or have infertility? And I ended up having 3 pregnancy losses and then an ectopic pregnancy. So 4 total pregnancy losses before I had my kids. I had the ectopic pregnancy in fellowship. And I had access to everything, had the gold star workup and was told everything was normal and it was unexplained. And we were just kind of left in that place where it's like, let's do IVF, but you're the clinical fellow, so you can do that next year. And I was like, okay, I guess that's, you're used to putting yourself on the back burner when you're in medicine. And that's a whole different podcast, right? But I accepted that information because I didn't feel like I had any other choice. But then I said, well, what am I going to do about this in the interim? Because if that's the case, like, how am I going to have a higher chance of success? I don't really believe that nothing is wrong. Maybe it's just there's not a test for it. And what can I start to do? And at the same time, this is now the longest answer to this question, Jen, I apologize. At the same time, I you choose a research project in fellowship because you do a year and a half of clinical work and a year and a half of research. And most REI fellows across the country study IVF in some form or fashion. And I went to my fellowship program directors. I said, I want to study natural fertility. This is the questions I had. These are the questions that women have. This is what I want to study. I was really fortunate because I was at UNC and one of the top researchers, and natural fertility was there as well. And their kind of comeback was, well, that's not a project anybody does. And if you want to do this, you'll have to get a master's of clinical research. And I was like, great, sign me up. Like, I'll do it. So I got my master's in clinical research. I did a lot of research on the luteal phase, on natural fertility, on ovarian reserve, environmental toxins, you name it. And I kept seeing the same word over and over as I'm creating these projects. And a lot of that was inflammation. And I started
Mm.
saying, this is something we don't talk about in medicine. We only talk about it on disease process, right? It's a part of endometriosis, or it's a part of, heart disease. There's nothing about inflammation, but when you start digging into this natural fertility research, it's mentioned. And so I did my own N of 1 study, which of course is not how we do studies. But I said, if I'm going to have to do IVF, I want to try to have the highest outcome. And it looks like inflammation is bad. So I'm going to try to not have inflammation at all. And what does that mean? Well, what are the symptoms and what can I cut out? And, in this process of getting rid of all the Teflon and plastic in my kitchen and re-looking at all the products we use and the foods that we ate, then I cut out gluten as one of the things. So I just realized as I was eating a very clean whole foods diet, I had less bloating, less brain fog, more energy. And even if that's a kind of quote harder diet to maintain because it's like less fun, I definitely felt different. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I know that inflammation is bad. And I also had some like luteal phase issues that nobody took seriously because, of course, if you've ever had any luteal phase issues and you tell somebody, a lot of times that gets really dismissed if you're still having regular cycles and you're told your cycle's regular and it's fine. So I was doing all this inflammation improvement. I brought up the luteal issues. Luckily, a co-fellow of mine was like, why don't you just do some Clomid? We'll just do some cycles while you're waiting for your IVF cycle. And I got pregnant
Mm.
and stayed pregnant. And postpartum, I was still kind of adhering to this anti-inflammatory life and got pregnant with my son right away. And, years later found out I ended up having celiac disease, which, is likely is what was contributing. And if it wasn't the cause, it definitely was contributing because I was consuming gluten the majority of my life. And I only happened to cut it out when I was in this personal journey of trying to decrease inflammation and learn to listen. So that was a very long-winded answer to say that, going through something as life-changing as infertility and pregnancy loss really changed what it felt like to be a doctor because I'd been a patient. It changed how I viewed fertility. I became very skeptical, not in a bad way, because infertility treatments exist. I do them every day. I have an IVF clinic. But thinking about how do we prepare people for this process and no longer adhering to the, just do IVF or none of that stuff matters, because I really do believe our eggs are inside our body. Our cells are all connected. Our metabolic health, of course, impacts the health of our eggs and our ability to get pregnant and stay pregnant. Yet I don't think that message is given to very many people, especially proactively. You have to really struggle and fail before you're in a position where maybe you start to find out some of the research, or, oh, maybe I should take that supplement, or should I eat this food, or should I do this thing? And I don't think that's right. I don't think we should have to fail before we get these answers. So that's largely personally driven by what I went through.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I have so many questions. I find it a bit confronting that you wanted to study natural fertility and your superiors around you were like, no, that's not what we do. It's quite confronting.
Yeah, well, you have to sit to become a board certified REI. Everybody talks about board certification. For OBGYN, you take a written exam and an oral exam, and you do the same again to be a reproductive endocrinologist. So 3 years of training, you take your written exam, and then you have to take your oral exam, which there's two parts of it that are based on cases. So all your infertility cases, all your endocrine cases, they can ask you any question. And then the third part is about your thesis, your research project. And so their fear was that natural fertility and epidemiologic research is so broad. There's so much nuance to it, right? Not every clinical study is the same. You have to really have a good understanding of methodology to be able to sit there and defend and know if a study is good or bad or the flaws in it. That I think they felt like a little safe lab project felt easier, right? There's a control variable and, there's something you're changing and what happened. And it's a much smaller knowledge base. Yet, anyways, I passed my boards on the first time and did fine, and my thesis was published, in 2 different medical journals, and we split it in half. So, none of that held to fruition, but I think that was the fear, right? Fellowship is hard, they want you to pass your boards, and so they say this project is easier, it's gonna be easier to sit there and defend, and that was their counter was like, "You'll have to get this master's of clinical research." And I was like, "Sign me up," and I love it because I understand clinical studies, I look at them all the time, it helps me explain them to patients in a way because it's a weird world we live in. Anybody can Google study on chromosome abnormalities in eggs, and you get some study that you don't understand, and yet you can say whatever you want to about it and put PMID number, and somebody is going to look like there's something supporting it. And yet we're also in a world where scientific research is misinterpreted by the general population so well. There's that study going around that was published in Nature looking at like mitochondrial DNA. And so looking at mitochondrial DNA, which is inside the egg, you have the nuclear DNA, which is the DNA that you pass on. And then you've got mitochondrial DNA. And of course, you pass on all your mitochondria, and that's important for cell function and life. But the study looked at mitochondrial DNA and showed that they don't absorb the same age-related changes that nuclear DNA do, which is really great news, right? Because you can't change the way that we age in our nuclear DNA, but if the mitochondrial DNA is able to help your cell function a little bit longer, that's even more proof that decreasing inflammation and mitochondrial health and metabolic health can help us. But this has been misinterpreted in the lay world as women's eggs don't age. People been lying to you. Women don't have a biological clock. And that's not what that study's showing. So I think it's an important world right now to have a good foundation of clinical research and be able to help explain studies to people. And I will say that's one thing in the fertility formula. In every chapter, I have an important study where I take a study and say, this is why you might hear that XYZ is the case because this study showed this. And one of our kind of core studies, because I think that for a long time, well, we know women's health in general, that there's not been enough research for, but there's also been so much paternalism where people have just assumed women couldn't understand something, so it's not explained to them. And that idea has carried over into fertility medicine very strongly, especially when it comes to IVF, where you'll find that some people go to a clinic and they're not explained the process, almost with this idea they're not going to be able to understand it. So just trust me, this is what you need to do. And I hold the opposite idea that people can understand anything. And if you give somebody the knowledge to understand it, they're going to be able to make more educated choices and they're going to tolerate the ups and downs of it so much better because they're going to know it's not a perfect science. So I think that we see all this paternalism in what we study and how we talk about women's health and how we approach education for people and for women's health specifically, that, breaking it down and making it kind of user friendly by using analogies or explaining how the body works so they understand what this study means. I think that's really essential in how we communicate health information today.
Hmm. And if only more doctors were perhaps coming at it from the place that you do, Natalie, honestly, it might be a very, very different world. I know it's a very big system, and we all have to kind of just accept that a system is the way it is, and hopefully it is slowly changing over time. But why? I mean, as someone as knowledgeable as you felt like they were still having to speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves, where does someone even begin with this? And what advice would you give to women who are struggling and don't even know the questions to ask?
So that's a great question. And I will say the world is likely different than, when I went through infertility in both goods and bads. I searched for information on forums and, random places. Right now, not all doctors are created, not all, clinics are created equal, but there are great resources to try to start to educate yourself. Education is the key that's going to open the door. So number one, you can't make decisions on data you don't know. So you have to start to understand the foundations of how your body should work when everything's working well. That's going to allow you to start to say, okay, this is not, and then ask the why. And I think another key to this, which is hard, especially for a lot of women, I'll put myself in this boat too. You don't want to be like the squeaky wheel. You don't want to be a nuisance or a bother or annoying. But the phrase is accurate. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, because you need to feel empowered to advocate for your health, because nobody is going to care about your fertility like you are. At the end of the day, it is your journey. It is what is going to change the course of your life. And you need to know that you trust what's happening, right? We cannot control the outcome. I tell every patient, but we can control the journey. We can understand what's going on in our body. We can know that we've done the tests we can do. We can know we asked the right questions and we made the best decisions we could for the data we had. And if you're not getting that, I think this starts with go to see a doctor early. Ask questions. If you are in a system that you're being told you can't ask questions or there's no time for that, or you're feeling dismissed, go find someone else. There are enough really good physicians now when it comes to fertility that you can find somebody. You can see patients we all see patients on telemedicine. You can travel. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's such an important thing. It's not the same, but I liken it sometimes because it is life altering, like cancer treatment could be. If you had an oncologist and it wasn't a good fit, you couldn't get questions answered, you wouldn't hesitate to find somebody else. If we look at the course of a life and having a child, if this is a life goal for you, then you need to know without a doubt that you trust the person who is on the other end of making the decisions that are determining your care. So I think start by educating yourself on how your body should work. If things are, red flags, learn to listen to them instead of gaslighting yourself. Because I've been on that end of it too, where I say, oh, that's just me. I'm just tired. Oh, and then things have to get so bad before you finally will listen and say, oh, maybe that's a problem. So I'd love for women to feel empowered and emboldened to say, I know my menstrual cycle so well that I know that this is off, or I know I shouldn't feel this way. And I feel, therefore, like I can speak up and say, I need answers because this isn't okay. And instead, we get dismissed. Then we question our own self. And we really have to get to such a level where everything's worse before we honestly are able to either seek care or get taken seriously. And that puts a lot of the onus on the individual going through it, and it's not fair, right? In a perfect world, we'd change the whole system, but that's not the world we live in. And I think understanding how to play the game that you're in is a really key to it. But you've got to start by kind of educating yourself if there is foundational knowledge about the menstrual cycle, about ovarian reserve, about egg quality, about your hormones that you probably haven't been taught, because so many of us haven't. That you've got to kind of start there to level the playing field, and then it gets into asking questions. And that's a large reason why, I wrote the Fertility Formula. In my perfect world, the book would go to people before they ever wanted to get pregnant. The person who says, I want to get pregnant one day, but not quite yet, but this is a life goal. And what should I do? In the perfect world, you'd get this book then, and you'd understand your body better and understand what you could be doing. And then you have it as a reference for when you want to get pregnant or you're having infertility. But I know a lot of us are a lot later in that journey. And I also think it's important. I'm not going to let you get a word in. I also think it's important to say that it's not too late to advocate for yourself or make changes. Sometimes we feel like I'm too in it at this clinic, I can't change clinics, or I'm on so many cycles in, there's no reason to ask these questions or to consider making lifestyle changes. And none of that is true. There's always room for you to, make improvements, to ask questions, to try to optimize what you're going through. And I hope people start to feel that as well.
In a perfect world, I think we'd all start learning this when we're at school, when we get our
Yeah.
periods.
No,
I
we just learn
know.
about condoms, right? You're going to get
No,
pregnant, so use a condom instead of really understanding that human reproduction is highly inefficient. And it's very fascinating, all
mm,
the things that have to be just perfect to actually get pregnant.
it is very fascinating. Well, we can hopefully start the changes. I mean, you will speak to your children very differently about their fertility, as will I, and I hope that that just starts to translate more and more. We can keep our fingers crossed. You must have seen thousands of patients by this stage over the years.
Yeah.
Are there things that you see? I mean, I know it's always very subjective with patients, but are there things that you see that people do that really change success outcomes over and over again?
When it comes to let's answer this a couple different ways. When it comes to natural fertility, one of the things that I see happening quite frequently, especially right now, that is, I was going to say it's driving me crazy, but honestly, it's so heartbreaking, is that there are so many people who are calling themselves a hormone expert or fertility specialist who are not trained in it. I think it's important that somebody listening understands. I did medical school, 4 years of OBGYN, 3 years of just studying hormones and fertility. And that doesn't mean that people don't have knowledge if they didn't go through that training, but there's a reason why the training is that long. And what I mean is it's really easy to draw a hormone panel and to make assessments off of one-time lab values, but your hormones are a communication system and they're dynamic and they're meant to change and respond. And so you honestly really have to interpret it for where you are in your cycle and the time of day and in reference to what other hormones are to draw conclusions. And a lot of times I have to compare it with an ultrasound to really get to the answer. So what we see is you go in with really valid symptoms. Somebody who is a hormone expert draws a lab panel and they make a diagnosis that isn't the real diagnosis. They may call you estrogen dominant, or they may say you have low progesterone and you're simply in your follicular phase, which is a normal time to have no progesterone and to have high estrogen. And then they give you some, compounded hormone concoction that they might sell in their clinic that includes progesterone in it that you're taking every single day. And I probably see at least one woman a week who has seen a hormone specialist person trying to get pregnant, having issues, has some valid symptomology, but have this lab panel done. And then the answer is take this pill. And they're actually taking, daily progesterone, which progesterone
Oh,
opens and closes the implantation window. It should only happen in the luteal phase. And these women are on birth control and they don't even know it.
goodness. That is so
Um,
frustrating.
It is, and I see the same thing with men, right? We do see a ton of men who get placed on testosterone. They do have low T, they do have low testosterone symptoms, they have low libido, fatigue, maybe they're gaining weight. Their semen analysis would probably be low if we checked it, but they're going to a man's clinic or the same type of place, and they're being given testosterone for their low T, which since sperm and testosterone are made together, testosterone tells the brain that sperm is already present and stops the hormones that make either. So similarly, that's male birth control. No sperm will be produced any longer as well. And there's other alternatives that we can give that can increase both testosterone and sperm. So these are circumstances where people are trying, right? And I can acknowledge if you went to your regular doctor and you got dismissed and you're having issues and you're trying to go see somebody who will help you. I see how it happens, but this is just highlighting why it's so important for you to know that. I did see a patient last week who said, I watched a video you said, and you said it's a red flag if somebody told you to take progesterone every day. And so I didn't do what they said and scheduled an appointment with you. And just saying, like, those are the type of things that unfortunately you've got to be on the lookout for a little bit, which is tough. When it comes to IVF or fertility treatments, let's say one of the most common things that I'm currently seeing is that, and this is generalizing, so I do want to say this is not everybody, is that the woman is doing everything she can, and she is sleeping and eating vegetables and doing acupuncture and doing yoga and like everything, and her partner is doing whatever he wants. And when we get eggs and sperm in the lab, we can see when the male genome kicks in at day 3. And when I see, halt of all this embryo development on day 3, and then I go back to them, we have this, WTF, like what happened, cycle review. I say everything stopped developing on day 3. And then it's like, oh, well, I use nightly cannabis, or, oh, I really like the sauna and I didn't want to stop, or these really sabotaging themselves, right? And it's not from a place of being mean, but maybe not understanding, because so much of the testing, so much of the emphasis is truly on women that we as a field, I think, have done a bad job of saying 50% of cases are due to male factor, that male fertility is really important. We need your partner involved. I'm always very careful to frame all lifestyle changes and advice and recommendation as you both need to do this. This is a team sport, because I can only, if we talk about IVF, I can only work with the eggs and sperm that I get. The lab, there's a lot of miracles the lab can do. It's incredible. The technology we can do is amazing when you really step back and you think about it, but we can only work with the eggs and sperm that we are given. And you do control the quality of your eggs and sperm to a large extent. So to the point that we can, because we can't roll back the clock and change our age, I would say we owe it to ourselves to bring the best eggs and sperm to the table, to make your partner say, hey, like this is important. Let's do this together. Let's cook together, and let's not drink alcohol, and let's stop the cannabis, and let's kind of be in the same mentality that we'd rather go through fewer cycles, have more success, and have an easier process. And that's really what I consider, optimizing your fertility. It doesn't mean that you'll never need IVF, but even if you have to do IVF, if you can have an easier journey, have more normal embryos, a higher chance of getting pregnant, that makes that process so much easier than what we see people experience, cycle after heartbreak. There's no reason why we should have to see embryos in a lab stop to develop on day 3 to get a partner to take it seriously, to come to the table. So a lot of that is discussion. We really try to get both partners on the first consult, because I also think something that has happened, and at our practice, all of our first consults are still virtual, which is, interesting. That happened in COVID, and we stayed virtual because we had such a higher utilization of 2 partners being able to both be present, since they can join from anywhere. Because when we traditionally have an office-based model and you have to see the woman, and if the male partner can't come, if we're in a normal heterosexual relationship, then suddenly the entire burden is on her to remember everything you said, to go back to her partner, relay all the information, break the bad news, and then there might be questions that she doesn't have the answers to. And then she's put in the position of delivering bad news and trying to advocate for both of you, versus when I get both people on, I can say, hey, here's the facts. Let me be the bad guy a little bit. Let me answer all the questions. It definitely makes it feel more team related. So I think, to the extent possible, I know I'm always like, let's do it now. Let's do it now. If you have 2 appointments and you're trying to get in with a fertility doctor, and there's appointment A and it's just you, or there's appointment B and it's a little bit later away, but your partner can join too, please choose appointment B. I think it will be better for you. It'll be better for your relationship, likely better for your outcome, because 50% female factors, 50% male factors. We really want you both to be a team in this process.
I guess the best fertility advice you can possibly give is get the male involved as much as possible. It is so overlooked and so frustrating. And obviously, I'm very far from being a fertility doctor, but I have students who come to me who have been on this journey for years, and their partner got one semen analysis 2.5 years ago, and it wasn't even with a fertility clinic. And it blows my mind that we've gotten to this stage. But so thank you for reiterating that.
Yeah. Well, there's also this thought that if the semen analysis is fine, then everything's fine with male factor. And I think that's an important thing to also say, is that The semen analysis is only looking at so many variables, but it's actually not looking at functionality or quality. And so we really do know that sperm are very sensitive beings. They change. You can get a total different sperm in 3 months, but that really does mean that even more than female, like men should be focusing on decreasing inflammation and lifestyle changes to have better sperm quality if you're trying to get pregnant. That would, if I had to choose one person, like it would be more important probably for your partner to, be more strict and adherent
Mm.
because the sperm are so influenced by the environment.
And so rapidly reproduced, it's not like the eggs that have been there forever and ever. And yeah, so thank you. We can't shout that one from the rooftops enough. I asked my followers a couple of weeks ago when we had scheduled this interview, what are the main questions that you have for Dr. Crawford, and what would you like me to ask her? And I have to say, a lot of the answers, the overwhelming majority, were, what do I do when I am looking down I'm in my late 30s, I'm in my early 40s, nothing is working. I feel like I'm ready to give up. And you must see this over and over again. And it's so heartbreaking as well. And of course, we're told we've left it too late, our eggs are too old, it's nothing we can do, we should consider donor eggs and adoption. What is the best advice that you give to couples who are in that position?
First, I mean, big hugs. It sucks, right? And it sucks to be kind of feeling like you don't have any choices. My best advice is to really approach this multi-layer. Number one, when it comes to like lifestyle factors, decreasing inflammation, be strict about it so that you can take it off the table, right? There's no mental space for, should I take CoQ10 or should I do that, right? Decide what you're going to do to lead the best anti-inflammatory lifestyle that you can and commit to it. To say, I'm going to take these off the table so that I know whatever treatments we're choosing to do, we've done everything we can. I think number two, know your own journey first. If this means you need to request records from what's happened so you can keep your own kind of log of what's going on. If you are being told, if you're doing the same cycle over and over and you're not getting different outcomes, if your doctor doesn't have any new recommendations or advice, if you're being told, oh, your AMH is so low, you need donor eggs, this and that, that doesn't mean that maybe you don't, but this is the prime example to get a second opinion. We are used to second opinions. I think sometimes patients get really afraid they're going to offend their doctor. We know when you request your record. So I love a quick note. Hey, Dr. Crawford, we're just going to get a second opinion. We'll circle back after. And I'm always like, great, because more than anything, I want you to have success. If it's not with me, I want it to be somewhere that you're going to trust. If you hear the same answer and you come back, great. It doesn't, at the end of the day, matter who it is with. I want you to get the outcome that you want. And every fertility doctor feels that way. So don't hesitate to say, gosh, that answer feels very final, or gosh, I'm doing the same thing every time. I asked for I call them a what the fuck consult. Like, let's go through what happened and what do we do next? If your clinic doesn't do that automatically, like ask for one. Say, hey, I want to have a consult to go over the cycles and kind of see what we could do. And if you're being left, and I tell patients this, if I have nothing new to add, when the cycles we did are the best that we can get, and I have nothing I can change, no new suggestions, then I do start wondering, are we at the end of the road? Are we really at that place where we have to consider, donor eggs or some new thing? A lot of times though, not every fertility clinic's created equal. So I will see patients come in who've done the same protocol time after time. It's like nobody reviewed their cycle. Nobody made any personalization or changes to what they needed. And that's heartbreaking too, because you're using time, money, emotional, physical energy in all of these cycles. So know that those are some red flags. If somebody ever says, this is the protocol we do, or we don't meet and go over cycles, or you're not doing anything different. The point of a protocol for IVF is to get the highest number of mature eggs you can. And that doesn't always mean you'll get embryos, but very often I see people who are not optimizing their protocol. They're a big clinic. They do the same protocol, all patients, because it's easier for them. It's easier for their nursing team. And, patients are left suffering. So you've got to see that red flag for what it is. If you're unsure, like send the records to somebody else and let them see it, because we'll easily say, you've done the same protocol 4 times. Like, let's try something else and see if we can get a different outcome. The other thing I'll say to this one is that very often in this case, I see that women have they have unexplained infertility as their diagnosis, and they, likely have undiagnosed endometriosis or adenomyosis, huge inflammatory disorder that really is changing the environment of our body and can strongly impact IVF and embryo transfer outcomes if we're not treating that endometriosis. And treatment can be surgical excision, but also we've got some embryo transfer protocols with Lupron and a variety of strengths and different ways that we can utilize it. But again, I'll see women who have really clear presumed endometriosis symptoms if you kind of talk through their menstrual history, yet they're on, a modified natural transfer cycle approach, and they're just really it's like the two people aren't talking to each other, right? Like it really doesn't make sense for their circumstance. So anytime you feel like you're at the end of the road, know that, you're keeping your side of the street clean. You're doing what you can. You can't overcome everything, but you should know, hey, I'm bringing the best eggs and sperm to the table. Like we're doing that. Number two, what has happened? Like get your records, think about your cycles. Like you should know what's happened. And number three, you should know what the next steps are. And if that's not coming from your doctor, if that's not coming from a clear, here's the plan, here's my questions, or here's what I want to change or try, then that is the perfect opportunity to get a second opinion. And I will add that a lot of clinics have an AMH cutoff to do IVF. This is not, they will argue often that it's patient centric. They will say, oh, you have such a low odds of success that we're not going to do IVF. That is extremely paternalistic in my opinion, because if I tell you, Jen, we're probably only going to get 3 eggs based on your AMH. That means we'll at most have 0 to 1 embryos, but we could do multiple cycles, and maybe once we have, get 3 eggs a few different times, the math will make sense to us. You should be the one to choose if you want to spend the money, time, effort, money to go through this, right? Instead of having me say, I judge that you won't tolerate this process or don't want to spend the money or don't want to do it. Or really is that a lot of people will say, go choose a clinic based on SART rates. Okay, now we're getting into the weeds. The Society for Assisted Reproductive Technology, we report to them to have an IVF clinic, your rates. And the one thing that I will say is a lot of people game the system by putting restrictions on patients. So if I have a patient who I know is not going to get an embryo transfer from that one cycle, she's going to have a negative pregnancy test in SART, even though there was never an embryo to put inside her body. So a lot of clinics will say she's only going to get 3 eggs. That's unlikely to result in a transfer. That's going to hurt our IVF rates. Therefore, we are going to decline letting her do IVF. And they don't tell you that's why, but that is part of, it's not why SART exists, but it's people trying to manipulate the data by taking away decision making from patients. And that's one thing we feel really strongly about, is that, if you're still ovulating, if you have eggs, if you want to try and you understand what the mountain we're climbing, like we'll climb the mountain with you. And if that means we have 5 negative pregnancy test cycles that we never had an embryo for, that is what's in your best interest, to be able to get the opportunity to have a genetic family if that is a life goal for you. So I think just framing that some of these recommendations from clinics, especially bigger clinics, especially those who are really concerned with success rates, or you might think about where their funding comes from, or they're not always patient centric in mind. And so you might run into some of those roadblocks and you're told it's about you when it's really about them. So please consider that when you're hearing these roadblocks, to say, well, let me get a second opinion. If you hear the same thing by multiple people, then, maybe you are at a place where there's nothing that we can do. In all women, your ovaries will go into ovarian failure. That is menopause. That means they will no longer respond to our stimulation medications. So for everybody, we do reach a time period where that will happen. But I always think that if you have a low AMH and you're being told no, and you're being told no on the low AMH basis, another opinion right away.
The things that you don't know are so frustrating, aren't they?
Oh, right.
I know. And I suspect this is in big part why you decided to write your book, The Fertility Formula. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book? Why did you decide to write it apart from that? And what do you hope that it leaves people with?
Thank you for asking. The book has been years and years and years in the making. I started I first got a book agent back in like 2018, and we shopped this book around, and we were told there was no market for a fertility book, that women didn't want to talk about fertility, and it wasn't something that anybody wanted to address. And anyways, shelved it for a while and then brought it back to life because I really just refused to believe that. This book is what I wish I had had when I went through my own journey. It's what I wish I could kind of give patients. And it is really reframing how we think about fertility, as your fertility is more than just, I want to get pregnant right now. It is really a state that your hormones are functioning properly. The ability to get pregnant and the I'm getting pregnant this moment are separate things. But the book is walking you through part one is everything we talked about earlier that I wish you should learn early, right? How your period works, what happens with your hormones, egg quality, ovarian reserve, kind of that foundational knowledge, but also how inflammation and the world around us impacts all of this normal functioning. And part two is kind of getting to the root cause of abnormal cycles. How do we really track our cycle and use that as a diagnostic tool? And what we need to know if we are trying to get pregnant or have infertility. And then part three is all the lifestyle ways to decrease inflammation and tying it back to fertility in your menstrual cycle and putting patients in a position of power so that they can understand how they want to make the choices in their life from a place of knowledge. And it's not saying you have to do all of this or you'll never get pregnant, but it's saying that the environmental health inside your body, the cellular health, the metabolic health, impacts our ability to conceive, impacts how our hormones function and how we feel on a day-to-day basis. And we have a lot more control over that than people have previously talked about. And really trying to kind of give the science and the evidence behind it and walk it into recommendations. Because I think that that is what a lot of us, and myself included, well, what can I do? Right? I was like, if I have to do IVF, so be it. But what can I do? What can I bring to the table? And I didn't like accepting no, it's okay, just do IVF. It'll be fine. Or don't worry about it, because I knew that just didn't make sense to me. So I'm really excited that after, this long, the book is coming, and it is going to be something that I hope really changes, honestly, how we view fertility. I hope it helps achieve that big goal where we start having fertility conversations in earlier time. I hope it helps put fertility testing at the forefront of the discussion, saying, hey, we want to have a kid, not quite yet, but what should we do? And putting you in a place to make those more proactive decisions. And then that whole piece number one, I know I'm controlling what I can, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to worry about making decisions for getting pregnant that are right for me. I'm not going to be worrying about, should I do acupuncture? Should I do yoga? Or should I eat broccoli? Or should I take the supplement? Because I've already learned all about this, and I know I've learned how to listen to my body and how to decrease my inflammation. And I know that I'm already making those choices that are right for me.
Wonderful. And it's available early 2026, is that right?
It is. It's available April of 2026, and it is available for pre-order right now. And because that's a long time to wait for a fertility book, we do have it so that we have some pre-order bonuses. So we have a hormone guide. There's access to an IVF course that I have that's really nitty-gritty on protocols and transfers if people are going through IVF. Then we also have a pre-release book club where we're putting modules out for 6 months. So we just had the first one that's going over some of the educational content that's in the book. And then we're having live Q&A calls where people can send in their questions and then join and ask questions, really to just try to help foster this discussion earlier and get this information into more people's hands. And people can learn more about it at nataliecrawfordmd.com/book. The book is called The Fertility Formula, and you can buy it everywhere you buy books.
Thank you. That's such an incredible resource for people. Goodness. So I will link up in the show notes your incredible podcast as a woman, your YouTube channel. Is there anything else that you would like to mention in terms of how people can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Natalie Crawford MD, and then the practice here in Austin is Fora, Fora, Fora Fertility. And I just thank you so much for having me and for holding space for this discussion.
Gosh, Dr. Natalie, thank you for being here and everything you do for the world. We so appreciate it. Thank you for being here and listening right to the end of this podcast today. And I want to thank again everyone who reached out over my IG stories a few weeks ago just to help me compile a few questions that I wanted to ask Dr. Natalie today. And while I wish that we could have chatted for many, many hours, I hope that you found some of this information helpful. Now, next week on the podcast, I want to take you through 5 powerful questions that you can ask yourself if you are unsure about your next steps on your fertility journey. These 5 questions are going to help you reframe where you're at and feel clearer on your direction for the future. So until then, I am sending you all of my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility.